About to go pick Charlie up. I don't know how Ben feels about being Maggie Simpson. You ready to go, Bunny? Go for a walk? What's up, YouTube? On our way to go pick up Charlie from school. It's been a while. Just got back from New York. Not giving up on that idea of trying to do daily hand breakdowns of other people, but haven't gotten around to it. I think I might actually go put in a session tonight. So that's the plan. We're gonna start off with that and hopefully get back into our regularly scheduled program. All right, say bye, Ben. Bye-bye, guys.
Turn it off, Daddy.
Charlie, you don't want to learn some poker?
No.
Some ladies' night poker? What about you, Benjamin? What about you?
How about Mommy?
Mommy? Huh? I don't think Mommy's playing on TV. All right. Gonna spend some time with the kiddos, get them to bed before we head out to play tonight. Charlie, what do you think? That's not nice. All right, gonna watch some of this ladies' night live at the bike. Love this show. Live at the bike makes a fantastic stream weekly. Fridays especially, the high stakes games are a must watch. Definitely. As we can see, it is next day. We are over here at the California Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park, one of my favorite places to go. It's an awesome museum. We have a yearly membership. Gonna be taking little Benjamin over here. Say hi, Ben. Can you say hi, buddy? You want to say hi? To the museum, and we're gonna be going over some hands from last night. I did go in with the intention of playing 3-5 no limit. I was aware that there was a 2-3-5 PLO running. They call it baby PLO. This game did not exist when I was playing PLO. I guess it's something they're trying to start running for smaller stakes players. It is a $100 to $500 maximum buy-in, which is a little short stacked, and it plays really interesting because it's $10 to limp, $20 to open. Once I had arrived at the casino, the 3-5 game that I sat into, the dealer kind of gave me a look and let me know that the PLO game was better. So I decided to jump into that. So we'll have a little bit of PLO action going today. Gonna find a nice little quiet space in the museum and get into those hands there. Hey, buddy. Wow. Right, we have found a nice quiet corner over here in the museum. I'm gonna try to go over a couple of hands. The first of which, there's an under the gun limp. I have ace 10 9 7 double suited. Gonna isolate here. I make it 35. The maximum I could have made it is 40. Probably should just be going to the maximum. The small blind calls, as did the limper. Flop comes king 3-3 rainbow with no heart, so I don't have the possibility of backdooring the nut flush. Goes check check. I decided to check this one back. I don't have any relevant blockers to some Broadway hands like king, queen, jack. And similarly, a lot of times I think you'll see people flatting with kings pre-flop. So I think if I do bet here, I'm probably going to have to go multiple streets. And I just don't think that's really the best plan of action. Also, if it goes check, check again to me on the turn, then perhaps now I can take a stab. The turn is a brick, and now the small blind checks. and the limper bets. I fold, the small blind folds, and the limper ends up saying, "How'd you know I folded the full house?" Obviously, he could be lying, but I think it's quite possible and likely that he is limping pocket kings here under the gun and calling a raise. In this next hand, folds to me in the cutoff, I have king 9-9-5 double suited, spades and diamonds. I like to open to 20. This is obviously a pretty wide open, but I feel like people are playing rather tight. To my surprise, the button, small blind, and straddler calls. But that's all right, because the flop comes ace 8-3 all spades, and we flop the nutter butters. Goes check check. I decided to just bet here. I don't want any action killing turns. People sometimes will be flopping flushes here and just never folding. So I bet 50 into 80. The button folds, the small blind folds, and now the straddler goes deep into the tank. He's the player from the previous hand that said he had kings, or rather that he flopped the full house. He tanks for quite some time, and I'm actually on my phone trying to write down the action from the previous hand. And while he's tanking, he ends up open mucking 10 deuce of spades for a flop 10-eye flush. I had been there pretty shortly when I had opened this, but obviously rather surprising that he's gonna call with some suited hand, flop the flush, and then just check fold. A bit frustrating, obviously. In this next hand, I pick up ace 10-9 with 3 clubs. I open to 20 and get 3 callers. We go 4 ways to a flop of queen 10-7 rainbow with 1 club. Flopping second pair here, as well as having the pair of aces. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to be reducing the combos here of someone flopping either middle set of 10s, as well as some combos of top 2 for queen 10. So I bet 45 and get folds from everyone. If I ended up getting raised on this flop, I'm just going to ditch the hand. There's just too many cards that I'm not really going to know what to do on. Similarly, I can bet here with aces because I do block the most obvious hand that's going to continue being king jack. Having the aces, it's just way less likely for him to end up making a hand here, as well as some combinations like ace king jack for the Broadway wrap. So once again, just kind of betting here to protect equity against someone who might have flopped bottom pair and has outs to 2 pair, or some bad straight draws that are just going to be check folding on this board. In this next hand, I pick up king queen jack 10. There is a limper. I open to 35. The straddler defends as well as the limper. The flop ends up coming 10-5-3 with 2 hearts. Goes check check. I bet 65. The straddler now jams it in for about 240 more. I cover. The limper folds. Given the fact that there are 2 hearts and I only have 1 heart in my hand, I think he's going to have just a myriad of flush draws here. Obviously, I also block top set, so it's a little less likely. Perhaps he does have pocket 5s or pocket 3s, but I just think that he is the most capable player in this game for getting it in light. There are a number of opponents in this game who I do know from the previous 5, 10, 20 PLO games who are much tighter that I think are going to have a stronger hand range, but I've just been seeing him give a lot of action. I think that he is going to be pretty wide. Getting 2-1, I like to call it off. The turn is the 8 of hearts. The river is the 6 of hearts, making it a little less likely that he does end up having a flush. He turns over ace 10 4 deuce 3 diamonds for ending up flopping top and the wheel wrap. So had us in a bit of bad shape. You can see the exact math here. Like I said, given that I was getting 2-1, I don't really mind my call off since he was the player giving the most action, and I think he's going to have a pretty wide range here of some flush draws. So yeah, just as we can see, not playing my best, running a bit bad, nothing really going our way, which you know, for being my first time in quite some time jumping back into PLO, not the best thing. Chilling here with my boys. Let's get into the next hand. Folds me on the button. I have Queen Jack 5-3 double suited. Obviously I'm stuck, playing pretty loose. I'm not going to be folding this. I open to 20. The small blind makes it 60. The big blind and the straddler now cold call this raise. This is a situation I should just be folding. Despite the fantastic price that I'm getting, I'm going to get myself in a bunch of reverse implied odds situations where I flop a draw that just isn't going to be good. Inferior flush draws, inferior flushes, inferior straight draws. Given the fact that the big blind and straddler cold call this raise, they're probably going to have a pretty strong range that is going to really dominate my hands. But, you know, stuck money ain't folding and winning. So I call and we go 4 ways to a flop of Queen 8-7 diamond diamond diamond. Flop the third nuts. The small blind checks. Now the big blind, who is actually a player that the dealer that I first walked into the casino told me was one of the spots in the games, leads for 150. The other spot, who is in the 2 seat, or at least the spot that I was told was a spot, he cold calls. I want to just fold here. Just a situation that really sucks. I feel like I'm going to be overflushed here a lot. But again, I'm stuck. I've been told that these are the 2 spots in the game, so I don't want to just fold. I am in position, and obviously flopping top pair, I can't also backdoor boat. So I elect to call and kind of reevaluate what's going to happen on the turn, which I just really don't think is the best course of action. This is a great way to throw good money after bad and really set the ball rolling on how we fall into these traps where, you know, we make 1 bad call which leads to 2 bad calls, and then we're snowballed into this massive pot where we can't find a fold. So I called 150, the small blind who 3-bet folds, and now we go 3 ways to a turn, which is an offsuit jack. So now I pick up top 2. The big blind tanks for a bit and just says pot. The straddler tanks for a while and folds. When he tanks for a while and folds, I think he's quite likely to have some combos here of worse flushes, making it a little less likely that the big blind does have a flush. Also, he could obviously have some sets. I have 415 left. He covers me, and I just end up talking myself into a call. Hearing that this guy is one of the spots in the game, I thought maybe he could be cold calling with some just dry aces that are now blocking the nuts. He did lead this flop, which I thought maybe sometimes he's going to trap with the nuts, which obviously really isn't the case. You know, he is betting 150 into 240, so it's not like he's potting here. So I think this is a pretty obvious bet here with the nuts. Anyway, as I said, stuck. Just figured worst comes to worst, I've got 4 outs. Nonetheless, I call it off, saying that I need a jack. There is an 8, so a couple of people at the table assumed that I had a set of jacks. He ends up rolling over King XX for flopping the second nuts, and it kind of goes to show you just how bad I'm really playing, because in my opinion he's playing it kind of poorly here. He's essentially putting the pedal to the metal with the second nuts, where in theory he should only be getting action from the nuts, but clearly I am a worse player than he is and getting it in with worse. So just kind of showing, you know, the case where this game is actually playing pretty straightforward and people are only getting it with the nuts, second nuts. I really just don't love my call here pre-flop. As I explained, getting ourselves into a situation of reverse implied odds. I flop the third nuts, can't find a fold, and run into the second nuts. Pretty poorly played for me. I think opening the button here is okay, but I once 3-bet and facing multiple callers, I should just be folding, because I think what occurs is just going to happen a lot. I'm going to make a case of second best and just not be able to find a fold. So after calling off here, we find ourselves stuck. I think a little bit over 1,000. All right, back at the car. Benjamin's enjoying some milk. We'll be getting into the next hand of note. We decide shortly after I get stacked in that previous hand to do a bomb pot. As anybody that's watched my previous videos knows, I'm not a fan of bomb pots, but again, I'm just not going to be turning down anything that the table generally wants to do. So we end up all going for $20 9 ways to a flop of Jack 6 deuce with 2 hearts. I end up looking down, I have Jack 9 6 deuce with 1 heart in my hand. So I end up flopping 3 pair. Checks to me in like middle late position. I end up betting 120 into 180. Obviously, I could just be going larger here, but I don't want to just bet pot and essentially block out all hands that can continue. I did just reload for the maximum of 500, so I really don't have much here. So if I bet too large, I don't think anyone's going to think I have any fold equity. The player to my immediate left folds, and now the player who had just stacked me snap pots it, folds back to me. I have $340 left, or $360 left? $360 left. Not a situation I love given the speed at which he potted. But I think here with 3 pair, I'm going to be blocking too many of the sets. Obviously, there are 2 hearts, so he could have some combos of like 2 pair plus a flush draw, a pair, and a straight flush draw. There's just a number of hands that he could have. Obviously, I'm stuck. I'm getting about 2 to 1. Again, I'm just not a fan of folding. I don't love the situation, but I call it off. The turn is a deuce, so I feel pretty good that I'm now essentially having the flush draws drawing dead. The river is a heart. And he rolls over pocket jacks for flopping top set and just cooling my pants off. Once again, it's pretty annoying and frustrated, obviously, because I'm never playing jack 9-6 deuce rainbow in any capacity, nor going broke because of the stack to pot ratio post flop and the fact that I bet. It's really hard for me to be just folding here once I bet. It's pretty frustrated. That's 500, obviously, that I definitely didn't need to lose. I'm not really sure if I could be bet folding here on this flop. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, if you think you could be folding here once you bet. Obviously, I guess I could check, but I think if I check and he bets, I'm just never going to be folding anyway, especially once I turn a deuce. So, not much to be said here, really. In this next hand, there is a limp. The aggressive player who I had mentioned previously, who seems the most competent of everyone at the table, opens to 40. I have ace, queen, 9, deuce, double suited in the small blind. That's ace, deuce suited and queen, 9 of hearts. This to me actually matters significantly, obviously, because if I have ace, queen suited and then 9, deuce suited, I'm likely just going to be folding, wanting to fold, as 9, deuce suited just doesn't really particularly play that well. And similarly, if I end up having like queen deuce suited and ace 9 suited, neither of these can make a straight flush. So I actually prefer the fact that both of my suited holdings in this case can make 2 different straight flushes. Seems a bit insignificant, I know, but important in my opinion. I don't really want to be folding here in the small blind. I think the much better play is to be 3-bet isolating. I think he is going to be opening rather wide, and my hand doesn't particularly play that well out of position, so I should be 3-betting here. I end up electing to just call, which I think is a big mistake. The limper calls as well, and we go 3 ways to a flop of jack, deuce, 3 rainbow. I end up flopping bottom pair, as well as 2 backdoor flush draws. That I check, the limper checks, and now the pre-flop opener bet 65, which is pretty small. Flopping bottom pair here, as well as a myriad of backdoor draws. I don't want to be folding. I think the best plan of action here is to be check raising. But the way I had kind of played the hand and tanked on the flop, as well as tanked here once he bet, it just feels like if I'm going to be raising, it's going to be super bluffy, and I don't think I'm ever going to be getting him to fold much of his hands. I still do prefer check raising here, obviously, as opposed to check calling, because there's just going to be a number of turns that I'm going to be out of position on, kind of left hung to dry, which is why I prefer 3-betting here pre-flop to be the aggressor, or just folding pre-flop, because playing this hand out of position is going to get me in a number of bad spots. I like to just call. The other player in the hand folds. We go heads up to a turn, which is the 4 of hearts, giving me now a flush draw with my queen 9 of hearts. Obviously, if I check here, I think he's going to check back a lot of his showdown value hands like aces, kings, queens, maybe even some of his sets. So I elect to take the betting initiative and start turning my hand into a bluff. I bet 140. He tanks for quite some time and calls. At this point, it is my plan to just be bombing the river as a bluff. The river is an offsuit queen, giving me 2 pair. And at this point, I actually feel like I'm going to have the best hand here a fair percentage of the time, barring him particularly having maybe ace 5 suited or a top set of jacks, maybe some combinations of queen jack. But I'm not entirely sure what combinations of queen jack are getting here on the river, except maybe like ace queen jack. So I elect to bet $215, primarily for value. He goes in the tank for quite some time, asks how much I have left. I show that I have 300. He calls, and I'm not really sure if I feel good about the call. There's part of me thinks that I do have the best hand some percentage of the time. As I mentioned, I was going for value. I announced Queen Deuce, and he rolls over Ace 4-5X for flopping once again a wheel wrap draw and getting there on the turn. Just again, really don't love my play. If I think I 3-bet here pre-flop, perhaps he just folds. If he does not fold, then I'm probably just going to get stacked because I'm going to bet this flop. He's obviously not folding on the turn when I pick up the hearts. I'm probably just going to bet get it in since I was fairly short. Again, just not a fan of how I'm playing. I think that since I haven't played PLO in a while, I'm just getting a little too loose in certain spots, playing some hands poorly out of position. The key to Pot Limit Omaha is playing nutty hands, nutty draws in position, and punishing your opponents. I'm playing way too many hands out of position in this case to non-nut draws. In fact, he ended up having, I think, Ace-5 of hearts or Ace-X of hearts in this case, so my hearts were dead as well on the turn. So if I do end up making hearts, then I'm obviously going to get stacked in that spot. So I was drawn pretty thin. In the next hand of note, there is an open to 40 once again by the one player that I've been kind of talking about consistently throughout this session. I'm on the button with Queen, Jack, 10, 5, 1 single suit. Obviously stuck a ton. I like to 3-bet to 130. You know, I just want to be isolating. I think he's going to be opening pretty wide. He has been the biggest aggressor in the game. At this point, we're playing 6-handed. He ends up calling, and we go heads up to a flop of 8-7-3. I flop a gutter. He checks. I bet 160, obviously with the nut gutter here and just 3 overcards. If I check here, I'm just not going to end up winning this hand often enough, I believe. He's going to take away the pot from me a lot on the turn. So I'm just kind of hoping to bet and take it right here on the flop, representing, you know, the aces and kings pre-flop. He check calls. The turn is a 10, and I now make top pair. He checks, and I like to check it back. You know, I don't think that I can withstand a check raise here, and trying to value bet top pair is really thin. The river is an ace, and he checks again. At this point, obviously I want to be representing top set of aces. I bet 280, and he pretty quickly folds. It's quite possible that my 10 was the best hand, but I don't want to be checking back here and hoping that it is. I think he can have some combinations of pocket kings and pocket queens that are just not going to be check folding this flop. And I think a lot of times people make the mistake of, you know, having some second best showdown value type hand, checking it back, hoping to win, when in all likelihood, a bet's just going to take it down. So I end up betting. Like I said, I'm not really sure if I had the best hand here on the river or not, but we end up finally scooping a pot to, you know, finally start working our way to getting unstuck. In the final hand of note, I open to 20 with ace, queen, jack, 4 double suited. There is a call behind me, and now the action player bumps up to 85 from the straddle. I'm in position. Obviously, I'm not going to be folding. I call, the other player folds, and we go heads up to a flop of ace, 5, 6. He now bets 130, flopping top pair. I'm just not going to be folding, although I do think his range here is going to be comprised of some like ace, king type hands, possibly also top set, but obviously, once again, just not going to be folding. I also have the backdoor nut flush draw. E-turn is a 9, and now he checks. Feels like he's kind of giving up on the pot, so I feel like I'm going to have the best hand here some percentage of the time. Obviously, I really can't be betting for value, so I check it back. The river is an offsuit jack, and he checks again. At this point with top 2, I want to be going for value. I like to bet, I think, 120, which is possibly a little bit too small, but really I'm targeting specifically his like ace-king type hands. Other than that, I'm not really sure what else he can really be calling with, so I feel like if I go too large, he's just going to be folding just too many of his hands. He thinks for a bit and ends up calling with what he claims was ace-6 for flopping top 2. Obviously, I think he's going to be 3-betting here pretty wide. Maybe he had something like ace-king 6x double suited. I'm not exactly sure, but like I said, he'd been the most active player here. We ended up booking a $1,750 loss, which feels bad, man. Obviously, I feel a bit frustrated that, I put myself into this situation. I haven't played PLO in quite some time, so it seems a little silly that the first thing I'm going to do after not playing for a while is jump into a PLO game, despite, you know, it is being a little smaller than what I usually play. And I think I really just play too loose. I don't think I'm the best PLO player in the world by any stretch, but I have a firm grasp of what it means to be a winning poker player, or specifically a winning PLO player, and I know I just play too loose. The key to the game is playing hands in position, drawing to the nuts, and a number of instances I was just calling with non-nutted hands, thinking that players were giving more action than they really were, which was my mistake. The truth of the matter is most people in PLO are kind of scared players, and when they are betting, they just end up having it most of the time. They're either going to have a blocker to the nuts or specifically the nuts, and that's about it. And if you don't think they're capable of bluffing, you know, with those nut blockers, then chances are they're just going to end up having it. So I feel pretty frustrated that I kind of put myself in this situation and that I played pretty bad. A bit of a learning experience. You know, I do know better. I think I'm going to be probably not putting in any more late night PLO hours. I haven't played in a while, and having been up all day long, I think it's a big mistake to be jumping into PLO, not being quite an expert at it, and being quite tired after a long day. So anyway, that's all for now. I wanted to kind of get this out quickly after having played. Just wanted to get the vlogs rolling. As I mentioned previously, wanted to do a hand analysis of the day of people that are going to be sending me hands. So if you can, please DM me on Instagram. I'd love to analyze some of these hands. I think that it's really interesting to get a different perspective on what other people's opinions are. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Time to pick up Charlie and get back to dad life. Thanks, guys.